my name is Noah Mosley and thank you so much for watching. In this video we will be recapping the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So let's go ahead and let's get into it. Alrighty, so recapping qualifying of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Coming out of Q1, we didn't see many surprises. We saw both Alpines get eliminated, which I had previously stated, along with both Saubers, which hung towards the back of the grid most of the year last year. And then we also saw Logan Sargent get eliminated. I've been pulling for Logan Sargent, most of last year. He was rookie, and in this year, we're still seeing him get eliminated in Q1 when we know that the car is capable of getting out of Q1, as we see with Alex Albon. I'm not saying he has to be right there with them, but when you look at Oscar Piastri, who is also coming out of his rookie season and looking at his performance, he's right there with Lando Norris. So we have to see Logan Sargent definitely step up his game in the car and get closer to Alex. Coming out of Q2, there really wasn't a whole lot of surprises here either with looking at the drivers who were eliminated. However, I will have to give kudos to Ollie Beerman as he stepped in for Carlos Sainz as Carlos had appendicitis. During the race weekend, Ollie had to step in, only had one practice session, and conducted the qualifying on really one of the most daunting circuits on the race calendar. And he was able to, beat some drivers who have been driving for a very long time. Now, with looking at the final performance coming out of Q3, the pace of the Mercedes wasn't nearly as strong as I had originally anticipated going into the weekend, as they qualified 7th and 8th. I figured that their car would have a lot higher straight line speed and have high cornering speed on the high-speed corners, and they didn't necessarily hold nearly as strong as they struggled when compared to the McLaren especially. And so I didn't necessarily anticipate that. And speaking of McLaren, I thought it was very impressive to see Oscar beat Lando straight out in qualifying performance at Jeddah. Once again, this was the second time he did this at the track, as he qualified better than him last year. So very impressive on his end as he continues to solidify his second season performance as being up there within the top 10 pretty regularly. Alright, so looking at the best bet for taking pole position going into the weekend, I selected Max Verstappen, and he went ahead and he did take pole position. This was no surprise here, and kudos to anybody who did secure the plus 100 odds, as I went over to go ahead and put my money on it as I made the video after, and I should have done it before. However, kudos to you if you were able to secure, and that was the easiest bank of money going into the year. Hopefully we see positive odds again coming out of Max, because I don't see any falter from this domination anytime soon. Now let's jump into what had happened in the race. I thought it should have been a pretty clear-cut issue of a penalty to Lando Norris at the start of the race when he jumped the start. He was definitely moving before the lights went out, and he went outside of his grid box. I thought the FIA should have at least issued him a 5-second time penalty for this occurrence, and I feel like even Lando knows that he committed it. After his post-race interview, we saw him avoid the question, but I guess the FIA decided that he didn't gain an advantage from the jump start, so they decided to not issue him a penalty. I don't know, if I was another team, I don't think I would necessarily be okay with that ruling. However, they decided to stick with it. So moving on, we saw Lance Stroll have a pretty nasty crash in around lap 7 to 9, I believe. And with the crash itself, he clipped the wall. And this is something that you see out of rookies, maybe second year, third year drivers. Lance has been driving for a significant time now. I believe it's like 7-8 years he's been in the car, and he is still having several of these crashes. He doesn't do very strong at street tracks itself either, as we saw from his performances last year. So, that's definitely an area that Lance Stroll needs to improve upon. Speaking of the Lance Stroll crash, it had caused several new strategy changes amongst the grid, with the likes of Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, and Joe Guanyu deciding not to pit during the safety car period. And I agreed with their strategy to not pit during this time, as there was a high chance of another safety car occurring in a street track, especially when you have an F1 rookie and a Ferrari that has amongst amount of pressure on them to perform in one of the most daring street tracks on the calendar. So I agreed with the strategy call. However, it didn't pan out for them. With that being said, it was still a good chance to take, and one I would agree with in the future. Alrighty, so who I had to win the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix was Carlos Sainz, and unfortunately Carlos did receive appendicitis throughout the race weekend, and he was not able to race in the actual Grand Prix itself. However, I will say the Ferrari did show ample amount of pace, as we saw Charles land on the podium and the third position, and we also saw Ollie Bearman, F1 rookie, racing in his very first F1 race, and he was able to put it in P7, a very impressive performance there. So I think it would have been interesting to see what pace Carlos would have had this weekend. I think he could have been up there challenging with Checo for sure. I think it would have been a long shot to be challenging with Max, but we just never would have known until he would have actually raced and actually qualified. So with that being said, I feel like many people saw this one coming, but of course we saw a Max Verstappen victory, and I feel like we will see many of these coming again in our near future. So alright guys, that's all I had. Thank you again so much for watching, and looking ahead, we have the Australian Grand Prix coming up, so be sure to keep an eye out for the preview odds video getting dropped around Wednesday, possibly Thursday of next week. We're back to the normal race weekend, so qualifying being on Saturday and then the race being on Sunday. So we'll have the recap video being around Monday or Tuesday of that week. So looking forward to it. Thank you guys again for watching. As always, please bet responsibly and happy racing.